Well, welcome back to my layout, everyone. This is not a video I was originally thinking I was going to make, but as I was tinkering around getting some work done on this part of the layout, I thought it might be worth sharing some of the discoveries that I've made over the years about traction. Might help some other mainline modelers that are looking at possibly doing some streetcars on their layout. So a little bit of history. I actually started with a small group of other scouters actually that we were going to make a modular display primarily for, you know, getting other youth interested in the hobby and also just for us to have a little bit of fun. So part of my idea was to try to cram as much interest, as much action, as much interaction into 3 modules as possible. To that end, I wanted to do a city scene. It would give lots of opportunity for lighting and detailing, and also I thought that it might be interesting to try to add a streetcar. So 2 out of the original 3 modules can be seen here. First one is down this way. It's got my Tim Hortons and a Merchant's Row and a bank. And then the other one is down that way. So the original plan was to actually have these 2 next to each other. In my current setup, I ended up putting in this corner piece so I could use them both. And I almost thought about not actually continuing with the streetcar in this layout's current incarnation, but since I already had the rail, had already started it, I thought I might as well continue. I am not a traction modeler. I'll put that warning on right now. I am not an expert on this stuff, but I did figure out some things as I went down the rabbit hole trying to figure this out. So one of the first things I was looking at when I started to kind of investigate traction was that there was track that needed to be embedded in the street. This didn't seem like anything too complicated at first because, you know, there's lots of other layouts that have industrial sections, street running, things like that. But I wasn't quite sure how to do it well, especially considering that I've been using plaster for the roads, and I wanted to make sure that the flangeways didn't get all gunked up. Yeah, it was going to be a simple loop. There was never any plans to have any switches or anything like that. As I said, I'm not really a traction modeler. It's just something to add a little bit more interest. So I wasn't worried about switches or anything like that, but I wanted something that would be reliable. So after looking around, I came across what is known as Orr Track. And I'll see if I can get to focus on this. Yeah, there we go. Oh, maybe. But it's got a very different cross section versus normal rail. This stuff is available online if you search Orr Track. I believe it's done by customtraxx right now. It's nickel silver. It's available in a bunch of different packs and 3-foot lengths. And it gives roughly the proper profile, or at least one that will allow HO scale trains to run on it. One of the other things I did discover, considering especially at the time I started this, I was still in school and didn't have a lot of money. They do recommend you buy a bender to do curves. They say it's required. I didn't quite find that it's 100% required, but the camera will focus again. You can see that if you're not extremely careful, you can definitely kink it. And I basically wrote off this piece trying to bend it without a bending jig. So wouldn't quite go so far as to say it's required, but I'd highly recommend it. So here we've got a couple of different types of curves as well. We've got one fairly sharp one down at the end and a much broader one in the middle. The broader one in the middle was pretty simple. I pretty much just spiked it down and worked around the curve slowly. You can also see here that I did spike it directly down to the plywood. I wanted to try to keep the road as thin as possible, so keeping the track down as low as I could seemed beneficial. It is a bit of a delicate thing to try to keep it all engaged, and there are a few spots I kind of goofed on a little bit, but it does function. From what I've seen online, a lot of other people use PCB ties and things like that to solder to first to keep it engaged. I did not opt to do that, but I did manage to get it to work mostly. One of the biggest problem spots is actually at the sharper curve. There's a little bit it pinches in. I've had to do a little bit of filing to get it to work properly. So one of the other things I'll talk a little bit about is the actual rolling stock itself. In Europe, I guess they mostly call them trams. North America, it seems to be mostly streetcars or trolleys. Streetcars seem to be the slightly more widely used depending on your location. I'll refer to as streetcars. This one in particular is a Bowser PCC trolley powered. I'm sure they're not $75 anymore. It was probably 10 years ago I bought this thing. This was an undecorated one. I'm going to do it up as a custom paint job. For actually the size of the town, it's not very realistic that they'd have a trolley, but as I said originally, it was meant to add a little more interest to the modules. One of the things I am hoping to do is actually have it operating off of an overhead wire. Right now it's set up just DC, power to the tracks, positive, negative, negative, positive, whichever direction the polarity, but the power flows between the two rails. There are options. It actually comes with this trolley pole, or streetcar pole, which is actually just a dummy one. But they also sell these beautiful operating ones. And it's got a little shoe there to go on the wire. And there's a little insulating plug in there. That's because obviously this particular one is a metal body, so you don't want that shorting out. But that's not set up yet, and that's probably going to be a while coming, if it happens at all. Still not entirely sure the function that this is going to have in this layout, but I wanted to at least lay the track, and so I have that option in the future. I figured I'd already had it in one of the modules, I might as well carry it on. So one of the other interesting differences that I discovered is that there's basically two ways of getting power on the prototype. One is the trolley pole, which tends to be a bit of an older style. It's not actually used all that often anymore. And then the other one is a pantograph. I'll throw on a picture of that. And that's more common on a lot of the modern systems. One of the other interesting differences that I found is that for trolley pole, the overhead wire is pretty much right over the center of the track at all times. Where if it's a pantograph, it actually kind of does like a wave pattern, like a sine wave pattern, to distribute the wear over the shoe on the pantograph. So that might be something to be aware of. On my layout, I'm going to just do a single center pole or center line. You can still run a pantograph on it if you want to. It's just not how the prototype does it. So if you're interested in looking at adding some traction models to your own layout, I suggest you check out Trollyville.com. It's run by a traction club out of California, and they have a lot of great information on their site. It's where I found out about the Orr Track and a lot of these other little details. So if you're interested in any of this stuff, I'd highly recommend you check them out. Well, I hope you enjoyed my model railroad update video. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'd love to hear any comments or suggestions in the comment section down below. And you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. And until next time, keep tinkering.